Well, good morning, Platwoods Church. Delighted to be with you this morning. Grateful to Evie for inviting me to come and be with you as you begin this journey through the 10 words, the 10 commandments. As she said, I have pastored in all kinds of traditions, one of which has been the United Methodist Church. And about 20 years ago, I was co-pastoring a United Methodist community in Houston, Texas called Mercy Street. Mostly, the congregation is made up of people in recovery from some kind of addiction or another, or who are trying to find freedom from their addictions. And we did all kinds of sermon series in the 7 years I was co-pastoring that community with my best friend, Matt Russell. We did sermon series on prayers, on the spiritual disciplines, on finances, on sex, on doubt, on suffering, all the big questions we wrestle with. The only series I can remember doing in that 7 years, which we got any kind of, why on earth would you want to talk about that, was a series on the 10 Commandments. Perhaps some of you had a similar reaction when you heard that that was going to be your summer series this year. I mean, the 10 Commandments, who cares? I mean, they're thousands of years old, right? How can something carved into stone possibly be relevant in the Bluetooth era? Although, to be fair, the first person to download information from the cloud onto a tablet was Moses. Thank you, I'll be here all week. Actually, I won't. How many of the 10 Commandments can you name? 2? 3, 4? Anyone think they can name all 10? All right, I'm going to put you to the test. Turn to your neighbor and see how many of the 10 Commandments you can come up with together. Off you go. Ten. You got three pastors. 3 pastors came up with 10. Any advance on 10? All right, how many could you come up with? 6, 8, 10? Anyone less than 5? No shame here, it's okay. 11. In fact, when we did the series at Mercy Street, we said, what should be the 11th commandment? And people got to write them on Post-it notes, and then we stuck them on the walls all through that series. Maybe you could do that, because it'd be interesting to see what you think. Life would be much better if everybody just did that, or stopped doing that. My guess is that most of us can only name 3 or 4 of the 10 commandments with confidence. Yet, the 10 Commandments still make the news on a pretty regular basis, right? If you've been paying attention, most recently, the governors of both Louisiana and the state of Texas signed legislation requiring the 10 Commandments to be posted in all public school classrooms, despite the fact that the Supreme Court ruled almost 50 years ago that to do that was unconstitutional. And then for the teachers, which version of the commandments are they supposed to post? Because you might not be aware of this, but the Jewish, the Roman Catholic, and the Protestant traditions all number them differently. There's no question that kind of legislation is often more about political posturing than it is about deeply held religious conviction. But still, a great deal of support for that legislation comes from people who do have deeply held beliefs and a genuine concern about all that ails us as a society. People who perhaps want something to point to and say, that's what we should be about. If we just did that, then our life would be so much better together as a nation. If everybody just kept the 10 Commandments, then what would this country be like? But then when it comes down to it, most of us can't even name all of them. And I suspect that what some, if not many of us really mean is, if those people, the bad people, kept the 10 Commandments, then everything would be much better for the rest of us. So, given that most of us can't name all 10 unless we're in a group of 3 pastors, Why is it that we don't know them? Why can't even many of us in this room, why don't they just trip off our tongue? I wonder if it's because deep down, none of us really like being told what to do. I mean, how many of you broke the speed limit coming to church this morning? I mean, sorry, the suggested speed for this stretch of road. While we may all agree that in general, that having rules is good so that we can all just get along, those rules really just apply to other people because I don't want to be told what to do myself. And after all, as long as I'm not hurting anyone else, then surely I should be free to do whatever I want. Perhaps you have heard someone say that to you. Perhaps you've said it yourself. Unfortunately, in my experience, we rarely know who's being hurt in the moment of much of what we do in life. And anyway, don't these particular rules, thousands of years old after all, just seem a little bit out of date? Thou shalt not covet what thy neighbor has. Most of us don't even know what covet means. And the reality is our economy is driven by doing exactly that, keeping up with the neighbors. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Bro, are you even on social media? Thou shalt not kill, when we still suffer the illusion that we can bomb our way to peace. Don't we just need to scrap the 10 Commandments and come up with some new ones that are just more realistic, more relevant? Why devote a summer sermon series to talking about them? And anyway, for those of us who read the Gospels, didn't Jesus come to do away with the law and give us grace? Well, let's take a moment to listen to what Jesus said about the law on one occasion and also listen to what God told Moses just before he gave him the 10 words. So we're going to read a passage from the book of Exodus, chapter 19, beginning at verse 3, and I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible. And Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, "This is what you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." And then these words of Jesus from what we call the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5 of Matthew's Gospel, beginning at verse 17. "Do not presume that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or stroke of a letter shall pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever nullifies one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever keeps them and teaches them, that one shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Holy wisdom, holy word, thanks be to God. Well, rats. I'm not here to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And we're supposed to keep the law and teach others. So I guess no matter how outdated we might think the 10 Commandments are, how irrelevant we might be tempted to think they are, we're stuck with them. God has apparently given us a bunch of rules to follow, and the bad news is most of us don't even know what they all are. But is that really what was happening there on Mount Sinai all those years ago? Moses walks down with the 10 commandments. Some of you must have seen that movie. Come on, okay, just checking. And no one is able to keep them ever since. That's it? That's God's great plan for humanity? Or was there something far more profound happening on the mountain all those years ago? Let's take a moment to listen in again to what God told Moses right before God gave him the Ten Commandments. I want to set the scene first. I want you to try and imagine that you're standing in that crowd at the foot of the mountain, and the leader who has brought you out of a life of enslavement in Egypt has gone up the mountain to talk to the God who has delivered you. All you've known to this point in your life was slavery in Egypt, back-breaking labor for the pharaohs. But then almost overnight, everything changes. You've seen these crazy plagues strike your neighbors, the Egyptians. You've walked out of Egypt, crossed the Red Sea, and now you're wandering around in this desert, and you've arrived at this place, this mountain. Enslavement has been your identity since birth. And then suddenly, overnight, you're free. No one to tell you what to do anymore. But you have no clue how to begin this new life that you've just been given. And you look around and you realize that pretty much everyone else there is thinking the same thing as you. Now what do we do? And some type A person, or an 8 on the Enneagram, steps forward and declares, what we need are some rules. That's how we'll know what to do. We just need some new rules to govern our lives. And that's what Moses is going up there to bring us. You wait and see. But instead, what do you get when he comes down? You get these words from God. I carried you on eagle's wings, and I brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. What do you get? Do you get rules? No, you get chosen. Chosen by God. The God who has delivered you from slavery in Egypt. A God who could have just given you a new set of rules, maybe better than the Egyptians' rules for you, but a set of rules nonetheless. But instead, God offers you a covenant, a relationship. And you hear words that in the moment make little sense to you. You will be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. And you look around as Moses says those words, and all you see are a huge crowd of the formerly enslaved and a few disgruntled Egyptians. There are no kings here. There are no priests here. You're certainly not a nation. And you're lost. You don't even know where you are. But those words come to you as a promise from the God who has delivered you from slavery, and perhaps they begin to sink deep within yourself. God is offering to adopt us, to make covenant with us. And I have come to believe that that covenant that God offers as those people and offers to us is not a bunch of rules, but rather a set of practices. Practices that reveal the very character and heartbeat of God and God's intention for all of humanity. Practices given for the purpose of shaping the character of God's people so that they will no longer live like slaves, but like human beings created in God's image. Now, as you heard those words earlier, I wonder what you heard when God said, if you keep my covenant, you will be my people. Did any of you hear the offer of a conditional relationship? Do this, and then you'll be my people. My guess is most of us have experienced that kind of relationship at some point in our life. Someone has said, if you do this, then we're going to get along just fine. But if you don't, well, it's been nice knowing you. Is that what we hear when God says, if you keep my covenant? Someone who's saying, but let me down, and we're done. I wonder if the deeper truth of what God is saying in those words is this: if you will keep my covenant, you will be my people. If you live life together with these practices that I'm offering you, then you will be my people. The nations will look at you and they will see me, see a God profoundly different than all the other gods that they know. If you agree to keep these practices, let them shape your life together as a nation, then the image of God in which you were created will become evident for all to see. And you won't be slaves to anything ever again, not even to yourselves. You will be truly free because that is what you were created for. Now, here's one of the interesting things about this whole thing. Only once in the whole of Scripture are these 10 practices referred to as the 10 Commandments. Every other time you find them, they're called the 10 words. Primarily because they're not commandments in the strictest sense, understanding them as the other commandments in the Bible, because there's no punishment given for breaking them. All the other commandments you read about, if you do this, then this is how you're going to be punished. But in the 10 words, there's no punishments at all. So no, I don't believe these are commandments. I believe they really are practices. Practices given to all of us, not just those at the mountain that day, but all of us, by God, to shape our lives in order to form a new kind of community, to protect us from ourselves, not other people, but from ourselves, from the impulses that have formed in the shadows of our lives, wherever those impulses may have come from, whether they come from our addictions, like so many of my brothers and sisters at Mercy Street, and probably that's true for some of my siblings here at Platt Woods, or whether those impulses have come from our culture and the lies that it tells us about how to understand who we are and what's important in life. Our need to consume, to acquire stuff, to know how we stack up against our neighbors, our perfectionism, our need to always be right, and even sometimes our religion, which instead of setting us free, has sometimes just restricted our lives or made us jump through so many hoops just to become accepted and believe we're acceptable. However, having said all of that, many of us are exactly like those people at the foot of that mountain, in that we too have been liberated from the things that have kept us in bondage in the past, and we too have entered into a new way of life. We have prayed for God's will to be done in our life. We've been baptized into a new life. But sometimes we still struggle with this freedom that God has offered us. We struggle in how to be part of the community of faith. We walk into this building in which we are told we belong every week, and yet the thoughts in our heads are often, if these people only really knew what I was like. Because some of those old habits and hang-ups that we have been freed from are so deeply ingrained in us still that sometimes they just pop out and we mess things up and we hurt the people around us, especially those we love the most. And when that happens, the temptation is always just to double down on the rules, just to try harder. But what we really need is God, the God of the Exodus, the God of Jesus Christ, made known to us in Jesus, who continues to come to people like you and I and say, if you'll keep my covenant, you will be my people. And we need to belong to a community committed to embodying that covenant together, because we are not meant to try and do this on our own, folks. You will be a people, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. It's all of us keeping covenant together. So I believe the 10 Commandments really are 10 words. That's what the book calls them after all. 10 words that offer us life. Not commandments coming from a God who has a hand raised, just ready to give us a backhander when we mess up. But words of life that come from a God who extends the hand of friendship to us and says, do these things and they will set you free. And they will keep you free. Free to love yourself, finally. Free to love others. And free to love me, which is how Jesus summarized the 10 words. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Keep these words and you will be my people, and I will be your God. Because underneath all of this, the 10 words guide us towards relationships built on trust and not on fear. trust of God and trust of one another as we keep these words together. But here's the thing, the 10 words don't protect us from evil. They're supposed to protect us from committing evil. They're given in order to check the impulses that lead to terrible consequences when we give into them. Because the sad truth is this, no matter how much we may want to believe it isn't true, so much of our life is actually out of control, out of our control, certainly. We cannot completely protect ourselves from the things described in the 10 words. We will experience betrayal. We will experience theft, envy, greed, deception, even murder. Posting these words on classroom walls will not prevent school shootings. My guess is most of us wrestle profoundly with at least one of these words in our life. But the good news is that these 10 words aren't given in order to make us feel guilty or feel shame about what they reveal about who we are. They're given in order to form a community, a new kind of community, in which the people part of that actually want to try and keep the covenant, keep these words together. And in doing so, find the kind of healing solidarity that we so desperately need. As we seek to practice these 10 words together, even as we live with the pain and grief that comes when they are broken. I think these 10 words come to us as sheer gift from God. They carry the promise of relationship with God and with each other. They carry the promise of freedom from all those things that have kept us from living the life for which we were created. And how many of us have just ignored this gift or tried to downplay this gift because these words kind of infringe on our life a little too much? These words are a gift that puts guardrails around some of the harmful ways we're tempted to give ourselves to the kind of radically individualistic life that I think has become the true American idol. You do you, I'll do me. Augustine said, no, love God and then do what you like. But so many other voices say, no, just do what you like. And then we spend the rest of our life asking, why don't I like what I do? So, I'll be praying for you all as you embark on your journey of exploring the 10 words in the next few weeks. Especially because here's the temptation that's going to strike some of us, is that we will talk about these words in the abstract. Or we'll just continue to think of these words as rules, and rules that other people need to keep because I've got my house in order, thank you very much. No, these 10 words intersect with our lives precisely where we actually live them. And so for some of us, it's going to be a difficult and perhaps painful time in the next few weeks to sit here and mull over the questions that these words raise. But I hope as you lean into these words, like those people at the foot of that mountain all those millennia ago, that you'll discover that the hand of God is reaching out to you in relationship and not in judgment. And I hope that those of us who still find ourselves in need of liberation from something that has a hold of us tightly, something that is squeezing the joy and goodness of life out of us, will actually find the freedom that we long for. May it be so.